What's up everybody, it's Anand from underdogstrength.com, and in this video we are going to learn how to deadlift properly. Because when done properly, the deadlift is one of the few exercises that actually works your entire body. Now the three primary movers in the deadlift are gonna be your quadriceps, your glutes and your hamstrings. But in addition to these primary movers, the deadlift also works all of your back muscles, including your lats, your traps, your rhomboids, your spinal erectors, and it also works your forearms because you have to actually grip the barbell. Even though the deadlift is a relatively simple exercise to understand, you actually have to learn the correct technique because it can be quite technical to learn. And the best thing about deadlifts is that you don't actually have to be dead in order to perform this lift. I know, it's a really bad joke, but the real reason why it is called a deadlift is because you're moving a dead weight off the floor. And there are some other popular opinions as to why this lift is called the deadlift, but from what I've seen, most people seem to agree that the reason why it's called deadlift is because you're lifting a dead weight off the floor. Now you may have seen different variations of the deadlift. The two most common variations are the conventional deadlift on the left and the sumo deadlift on the right. In a conventional deadlift, your hands are going to be outside your knees, and in a sumo deadlift, your hands are going to be inside your knees because you have a much wider stance. But in addition to these two variations, there's actually so many different variations of the deadlift. These are the 9 variations that I use personally in my own training and when I'm coaching my clients. The conventional deadlift and sumo deadlift is what you already saw. Then you also have the Romanian deadlifts, stiff-legged deadlifts, hex bar deadlifts, snatch grip deadlifts, deficit deadlifts, block pulls, single leg deadlifts. And if you have any other deadlift variations that you have tried, then make sure to leave them down in the comment section below. In this video, we will be focusing mainly on the conventional deadlift. However, if you want to learn any of the other deadlifts, then make sure to subscribe to my channel because I'm gonna be making a lot more deadlift videos in the future. Now, just like with any sport you play, I always recommend that you use the correct equipment. The very basic piece of equipment that I recommend is that you use a proper shoe for the deadlift. You can pretty much use any flat shoe, you don't really have to go for anything fancy, but these are the popular types of shoes that I've tried. Most beginners like to start with the Converse Chuck Taylors because they're pretty cheap, but then you can also try wrestling shoes, the Reebok Power Shoe which I currently use. You can even try deadlift slippers, you can even buy special deadlift shoes. But I highly recommend that you do not use any sort of running shoes for the deadlift. Running shoes are great for running, but I definitely would not recommend them for lifting weights because they have a lot of cushion in them and tend to move around because of that cushion. And especially when it comes to deadlifts, you want your feet to be flat on the floor and you want your feet to be as close to the floor as possible. I also recommend that you use chalk when you deadlift because when the weight starts to get heavy, it's gonna become harder and harder for you to grip the bar, but when you have chalk on, it's gonna be a little bit easier for you to grip the barbell. I also recommend that you get a solid pair of wrist straps because when your grip starts to fatigue, you can actually put on these straps to help you do more training volume. I recommend that wrist straps should be used somewhat sparingly and only use them when your grip actually starts to fatigue, but try to do most of your training without these wrist straps. The next thing that I recommend is that you get a pair of long socks because when you deadlift properly, the barbell is going to be very close to your body and you might end up scraping your shins. So in order to protect your shins, these long socks will really help you. And you don't even need anything fancy. Even if you get something like a pair of long soccer socks, they will really help. And as you get more advanced, you can even look into getting a lifting belt, and you can even look at getting a deadlift jack, which is going to make it easier for you to load and unload the weight on the bar. And the best thing is that all of these things can be found nearly at any store, including Amazon. And I'll also leave a link down in the description below to where you can find these products on Amazon.com. And finally, in terms of the actual weights that you use in the gym, you want to use a standard Olympic plate which is 450 millimeters in diameter, and you want to make sure that the weights that you use are round, and you definitely don't want to use those hex plates that you see at the gym. If you're a complete beginner and you don't want to start with 45 pounds on each side, you can find a bumper plate which actually weighs a lot less. but is the same diameter as an Olympic weight plate. Now let's go over the actual deadlift setup. The first thing you want to do is step up to the barbell with your feet directly underneath the barbell. The barbell should be directly over the middle of your foot, and too many beginners make the mistake of either setting up too close to their shins or too far away from their shins. The middle of your foot is also the middle of your balance, and by placing the barbell directly over the middle of your foot, it's gonna help you balance out the whole movement. And in terms of the actual stance width, you want to start with a width of about shoulder width or even slightly narrower. And a good starting point to find the ideal stance width for you is to simply take the same stance as if you were gonna take a vertical jump. So take the stance that will allow you to jump the highest. This will typically be the position from which you can generate the most power from. And finally, your toes will ideally be pointed out just a little bit, maybe about 10 degrees or so, but this is gonna differ from person to person. This is just a good starting point for most people. Now, if you don't set this up correctly, it's gonna throw you off balance and mess up your entire lift. Now that we've set up our feet, the next thing you want to do is you want to take a deep breath and push all the air down into your belly. This is known as the Valsalva maneuver, or it's also known as bracing your core. The next thing you want to do is that you want to hinge at the hips and sit your hips back. And what this will do is that it's gonna load your hamstrings. So the first movement should be your hips going back, and then you want to reach down to the barbell. Now the deadlift by itself is a hip hinge movement, so you want to make sure that there's little to no movement in your actual back, and most of the movement is happening by you hinging at the hips. Then the next thing you want to do is you want to grip the barbell properly. Two of the most popular grips that you might have seen are the double overhand grip or the mixed grip. The double overhand grip actually works, but then once the weight starts to get a little bit heavier, most people switch over to the mixed grip, because when the bar starts to roll out of one hand, with the mixed grip your other hand is gonna catch it and it's gonna balance out that movement. And the main difference between these two grips is simply that one hand is going to be pronated and the other hand is going to be supinated. The mixed grip works well for most people, but some people have issues with straining their bicep muscle on the supinated arm, or even lifting unevenly simply because their grip is uneven. And if that's an issue, then you can switch over to something called a hook grip, which is going to be a double overhand grip, but instead of gripping your fingers around the bar, you're first going to wrap your thumb around the bar, and then you're going to wrap your fingers around your thumb. Now this is going to be very painful, and I don't recommend this for beginners, but it's a very secure grip, and as you get more advanced you can definitely try this. Now, regardless of the type of grip you decide to use on the deadlifts, one thing to keep in mind is that you want to grip the barbell closer to the base of your fingers and not closer to the base of your palm. This is because if you grip it too high in your palm, the barbell will eventually slide down anyway, and it might lead to additional calluses. So for the sake of efficiency, grip the barbell close to your fingers. And the final thing to keep in mind in terms of grip is that you want to grip at about shoulder width. If you grip too narrow, then it's gonna make you round your back very easily, and if you grip too wide, it's going to make the lift more inefficient. Now the only exception to this is if you're intentionally doing a snatch grip deadlift, but for most people, for a conventional deadlifts, your arm should be hanging straight up and down. So let's go over the setup again. After you step up to the bar with the barbell directly over the middle of your foot, you wanna take a deep breath and then hinge at the hips and reach down towards the bar and take your grip. Now this is one of the most important steps, where after you grip the bar, you wanna pull yourself into the correct position. This is known as taking the slack out of the bar. Now here I'm gonna show you an older clip of myself deadlifting when I was first learning how to deadlift, and you're clearly gonna see that the form isn't very good at all, especially because I was not staying tight, I was not taking the slack out of the bar, and you can clearly see that my back is starting to round, my hips are shooting up, and you definitely do not want to deadlift this way. So here you can see that I'm almost jerking the bar off the floor. I'm not taking the tension out of the bar, and I'm not staying tight throughout the movement. Instead, you want to take your time at the bottom of the movement to make sure that you're completely tight and to make sure that you're in the correct position. Here you can see that I'm actually trying to get into the correct position at least 2 or 3 times before I actually start to pull the weight. Another benefit of using this technique is that it's gonna help you find the correct position or the correct starting position. Now on the picture on the left, you can see that my scapula or my shoulder blades are way too forward in comparison to the barbell, and on the picture on the extreme right, you can see that my scapula is way too behind the bar. Now ideally for the barbell to move, you want your scapula to be directly over the barbell, and if the weights are heavy enough, the barbell will not move off the floor unless your scapula is directly over the barbell. Now some people actually try to squat the bar, but what happens is that when you try to squat down too low, your scapula is going to go behind the barbell and your hips are going to shoot up first before the weight starts to leave the floor. Now you can clearly see this in one of my older videos where I'm dipping down or I'm squatting down too much and my hips are shooting up even before the barbell starts to leave the floor. Let's look at the same video in slow motion. So you can see my shoulder blades are behind the bar, and then even before the weight starts to move the floor, my hips first shoot up, and when my hips shoot up, it puts my scapula over the bar. You can see my shoulders coming forward, and then the barbell breaks the floor. But this is not a very good position to deadlift because you're simply wasting a lot of energy in terms of just trying to break the weights off the floor, and this movement can also be pretty unsafe for you in the long term. Let's look at another rep, and you're gonna see pretty much the same thing, that I'm trying to dip too low and my shoulders are going behind the bar, and then as soon as I start applying pressure to the bar, my hips shoot up first, then the barbell starts to move, and it's simply an inefficient movement overall. And one thing to keep in mind about deadlifts is that your back should always be flat, and this will ensure that you stay safe during the movement. And the best thing about deadlifts is that it teaches you how to keep your back flat even outside the gym. So next time you go and try to lift a box or something like that, it's gonna have a great carryover because you're automatically going to get into the perfect position. So whether you're in the gym or outside the gym, try not to flex your spine too much, especially if you're going to lift weights while flexing your spine. You want to keep your spine as neutral as possible. And the best way to prevent your back from rounding is to simply start off the deadlift correctly. And because when you set up properly and when you have the correct starting position, it's going to set you up for a more efficient lift overall. Now that we found the correct position to start the deadlift, the way I like to coach the deadlift is that you want to treat the deadlift as a push and not a pull. And this simply means that you initiate the movement by pushing through your legs into the floor, and then once the barbell crosses your knees, you want to push your hips forward, and you push your hips forward by squeezing your glutes. Now even though the deadlift is technically a pull, the cue that I'm giving is simply a coaching cue, and what this does is that it enables you to use the correct muscles when you deadlift, which are your quads, your hamstrings, and your glutes. But more importantly, it helps you solve a lot of the deadlift issues that I see time and time again from so many people, is that they have problems with back rounding and losing position. So this one cue of simply thinking of the deadlift as a push usually solves all of the problems. So remember, you want to start the deadlift by pushing with your feet into the floor, and once the barbell crosses your knees, you want to push your hips forward by squeezing your glutes. Here you can see this in action. I'm pushing through my legs and I'm pushing my hips forward, and you pretty much want to do this every time. You want to set the barbell down, make sure you're in the correct starting position, push your feet into the floor, and then once the weight starts to cross your knees, you want to squeeze your glutes forward and extend your hips. Let's look at one more rep. Take a deep breath, pull yourself into position, push with your feet, and push your hips forward. Let's look at it from a different angle. You want to set up with your feet about shoulder width or slightly narrower, with your feet directly under the barbell. Pull yourself into the position, push with your feet into the floor, and then push your hips forward. And you want to stand tall at the top. Again, one more rep. You can see I narrowed my grip a little bit to make sure that my hands are hanging straight up and down. Push to the floor and simply stand tall. Then you want to set the barbell back down and repeat the same procedure all over again. Take a deep breath, pull yourself in the position, push to the floor, and squeeze your glutes to extend your hips and stand tall. Now, one mistake I see beginners doing is that they don't know how to complete the movement properly. A complete movement is known as the deadlift lockout, and in the picture you can see that a lot of beginners tend to do a soft lockout, and especially if you're planning on competing in powerlifting or something like that, then you have to have a complete lockout. And this means that your knees are extended completely and your hips are extended completely. And on the picture on the left you can see that the knees are soft, and also the posture is hunched over. On the picture on the right you can see the knees are extended, the hips are extended by squeezing the glutes, and the person is standing tall. So make sure to complete the movement. You want to push to the floor, you want to push your hips forward, but you want to push them all the way forward. So don't stop at step number 3. Step number 4 is the actual completion of a deadlift. And after you're done with step number 4, the next thing you have to do is set the weight back on the floor before you do your next rep. Now, the deadlift is a concentric only movement, so you do not need to control the weight when you're setting it back down. And in fact, if you try to do that, if you try to really control the weight on the way down, it can actually lead to injuries. And this can be an issue if you're training at commercial gyms where they might complain about the noise. But as you can see that I'm actually lifting on a deadlift platform, and my gym has no issues with this whatsoever. For this reason, I really recommend that you find a gym or an environment that allows you to lift heavy weights without worrying about making too much noise or anything like that. So let's end the video by going over the entire deadlift setup and the entire deadlift technique all over again. The first thing you want to do is that you want to step up with your feet directly underneath the barbell, with the barbell directly over the middle of your foot. Then you want to take a deep breath and you want to brace your core. After you brace your core, you want to start by hinging at the hips, and when you hinge at the hips, it's going to load your hamstrings. Then you want to slowly work your way down to the barbell and grip the barbell. And in terms of the grip, you can use a double overhand grip or a mixed grip. If you still want to use a double overhand grip with heavier weights, or if you're advanced, you can even try a hook grip. And another thing to keep in mind about grip is that you want to grip close to the base of your fingers and not the base of your palm. And finally, your grip width should ideally be close to shoulder width for maximum efficiency. Then you want to find your ideal starting position by having the barbell directly underneath your scapula. Then you want to start the movement by pushing through your legs, and once the barbell moves past your knees, you want to push your hips forward to finish the movement. And you want to make sure to lock out completely and avoid a soft lockout. You want to lower the barbell and completely reset the weight before you do your next rep, and this is very important. And you want to repeat all the steps again and again for each rep. Each rep should look exactly the same. So lower the bar but don't control it too much. Take a deep breath, then pull yourself into position, push with your legs into the floor, then push your hips forward, squeeze your glutes to finish the movement and lock out completely. So that's it guys, I hope you found this informative. One tip that I have for you is that you want to make sure that you film yourself while you lift, because filming yourself is one of the best ways of coaching yourself. And if you actually end up filming your lifts and if you want to send me your videos for a form check, then you can always do that by emailing me at anand@underdogstrength.com, or if you already follow me on Instagram at underdog.strength, then you can even DM me your videos for a form check, and I'll do my best to get back to you as fast as possible. If you have any questions for me or if you'd like to request a video, then make sure to leave a comment down below. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel because I'll be making a lot more videos focusing on deadlifts and also some of the other lifts as well. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And if you feel there's someone who'll benefit from this video, then don't forget to share this video with a friend as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.